My earliest memory of stillness that I can recall is from when I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. I could have been years older for all I know, but 4 or 5 seems right. It makes me tear up just thinking about it. It's such a beautiful and important memory to me. It was a cold, overcast winter day in a South Jersey suburb. There was snow on the ground, and I can't remember if it was actively snowing at the time or not, but there was enough snow on the ground for me to want to go outside and play in it. I was bundled up in my snowsuit. I was laying on my back in the snow, I assume to make a snow angel. All I really remember is being surrounded by peaceful, cold, quiet stillness as I stared up at the gray sky. Those cold winter days in a suburb can already feel so still and quiet, and with a hood covering my ears, that still, cold quiet was muted even more, amplifying the sound of my own breath and any subtle movements that my head made within the hood. The silence was so loud, and the cold was so warm. I felt so in awe of the moment, and my senses were completely taken over by this peaceful stillness. I'm not sure where my parents were. Maybe my mom was watching from the window, or perhaps a few feet away from me outside. I doubt she remembers. But I treasure that moment of what felt like still solitude, alone with the snow and the cold and the gray sky, alone with the quiet and my breath, alone and yet feeling so connected to everything in my sight, feeling completely embraced by the moment and at peace. It's only now that I have the vocabulary and concepts and experiences to describe this memory with any kind of comprehensive understanding. Up until fairly recently, I appreciated this memory as a moment of peace in the snow. I now understand why it was so peaceful, the stillness. I'm so grateful to have had this experience of stillness as a child. Now I use it as a reference point to the stillness that I intentionally drop into these days. I've recently come to love stillness, or at least I've recently become aware of my love for stillness. I've been wrapping my head around why it's so valuable to me and want to profess my love. I've been meditating, doing some version of yoga, and journaling on and off for about 7 years now. And within these practices, I was reminded of stillness by coincidence. I was really doing these things to try to make things happen in life, to get my life sorted out. I wouldn't say I was fully aware of the power of the stillness itself, but was more drawn to what I thought I was getting out of the action of these practices. But now I understand that an element of stillness is the magic in all of these practices. Now stillness is something that I intentionally tap into on a daily basis if I'm in my flow. I long for it, I crave it, I need it to function in any sane manner. It reminds me of who I am and helps me to release stuck emotions. It's in the stillness that I hear from my inner voice. The stillness fills me with love and trust in myself and in life. It's the fertile ground for any seed of aligned action to sprout. And yet sometimes, when my conscious awareness slips into the passenger seat and the mind takes the wheel, I avoid stillness. I avoid it because it's in stillness that any discomfort can arise with enthusiasm. It's in the stillness that I'm faced with all of the feelings that I've avoided feeling, and it can be really scary to face those. Something that's changed my life recently is learning how to release these emotional energies when they arise in the stillness and anytime. Now, when they arise, I I can place all of my awareness on the physical sensation, where it is in the body, and breathe into it. Through this practice, the heavy discomfort dissolves, leaving peace, freedom, and lightness in its place. Even though I know how to release the yuck when it arises in stillness, I still have to remind myself of this sometimes when I catch myself avoiding it. It's been a practice for me to consciously get still and release when I'm avoiding feeling my feelings. It's a conditioned response, a reflex, as most of us are used to distracting ourselves from feeling uncomfortable feelings. Need to eat a meal? Why not watch a show too? Need to make a meal? Why not listen to a podcast as well? I still do these things maybe about half the time, but when I choose stillness and release over distraction, I'm always rewarded. In my experience, if I have the time and the awareness, I choose to release any uncomfortable feelings so that I can eat or cook or do anything without needing to distract myself with something to take the edge off of the discomfort. Every time I choose to get still and feel whatever arises to completion, I'm rewarded with clarity and peace, joy and love, lightness and freedom. I'm rewarded with less reactivity on a daily basis, more compassionate relationships, increased self-worth, and hope for all that is. To me, it feels like slowing down. It feels like tuning into my body physically and emotionally, becoming the witness of the thoughts, and maybe even accessing that deep awareness of being that's above thought, where the thoughts are few and far between. It feels like an energetic checkup and recalibration. It feels like tuning into the flow of life. It feels like surrender. It feels like hopping into a boat flowing gently downstream without a paddle. It feels like peace. After recalibration, in the stillness, I feel more clear, loving, and tuned into my own path, and tuned into my flow within the greater flow of life. Lately, I've been tapping into stillness through meditation, yoga, watching and listening to the trees blowing in the wind, eating my meals. I've even felt it during a few shifts at work. It seems stillness could possibly be interchangeable with presence. Either Eckhart Tolle or Kim Eng, I can't remember which, said that presence and stillness are both the absence of thought. I think for me it feels like there's a bit of a difference in that I associate stillness with really keeping my attention on my body and the energetic realm, while I associate presence with keeping my attention on whatever I'm currently doing, even if that's being still. Maybe being present requires an aspect of stillness and vice versa. To me, it feels like stillness can be a precursor to presence. For example, if I released trapped emotions in stillness before going into work, I feel lighter and more joyful, and I feel like I can be present with whatever arises there instead of being reactive and acting from fear. Maybe one day I'll share how I came to intimately understand Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now in an urgent effort to rid myself of deep emotional pain. Either way, this book greatly increased my awareness of presence, of stillness, and deeply changed my life for the better. It might be the book that's influenced me the most, although it didn't resonate with me the first time I listened to it. Then, 5 or so years later, after listening to it the first time, I was reminded of its existence at the perfect time when I needed it the most, and every word was my medicine. What do you think? In what ways do you embody stillness and presence? What has it taught you? How has it affected your life experience? Do you, like me, avoid it sometimes? Stillness is my new favorite, and I'm excited to see what else I learn from it.